Hello, and welcome to the Real Estate and Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Jimmerson, your Southeast Alabama luxury realtor with First-Class Real Estate Wiregrass. In this podcast, we're diving deep into the intersection of real estate and business to uncover what makes successful entrepreneurs tick. Each week, I'll be interviewing top business owners and investors from the Wiregrass region and beyond, exploring how they've achieved enduring success and how their strategies can apply to both real estate and other industries. Whether you're a real estate professional or a business enthusiast, get ready to gain valuable insights, discover new strategies, and elevate your own success. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to the Real Estate and Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Jimmerson. Thank you for tuning in today, whether you're listening in on the podcast or watching the video on my YouTube channel, Wiregrass Veteran Realtor. Today we have with us Rhyan Finch, husband, father, real estate investor and developer, and founder of First-Class Real Estate Wiregrass. Thanks for coming on today, Rhyan.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited about today's. Rhyan has a wealth of knowledge from starting a business up, managing it, growing and scaling as he's done with First-Class Real Estate, a large nationwide franchise. So, Rhyan, let's say, going back to when you first started in real estate, with everything you know now, what would you give advice to whether a new agent or somebody wanting to start a team or a brokerage or a franchise?
The funny thing is, what happens in this business is you get started and you get trained on misconceptions. And it's almost like a model where people want you to stay in a certain route. And so what happens is they train you to think this way. You don't want to open your own brokerage because of the liability, right? But you can stay here at the brokerage and pay E&O, right? So it's like, wait a minute, well, which one is it? I'm having insurance or I'm not. It's almost like if someone went out and said, don't buy real estate, just rent, because that way you don't have to do the repairs, and you're like, yeah, but there's a downside too, right? And so, the biggest thing is to figure out those misconceptions and get the truth and figure out your truth. And it'll be different for everybody. Some people, you're right. It's cheaper to rent or it's better to rent something than it is to own. For some people, it's better to be an agent. For some people, it's better to be a team leader. For some people, it's better to be a broker owner. And so there's not any right or wrong. It's just really what's inside of you, and that needs to come out. And what you'll find, though, is sometimes people don't have that come out because they lack information, they lack knowledge, they don't know where to get it, and the circle that they're in keeps them set on that information because they're only the size fish of the pond that they're in. And so that person limits them because that person's limited. And when you get to a place where you start disrupting your own thinking, you're getting up in the morning, you're going, why do I do that? Why do I operate this way? Why can't I change what I'm doing? Why, if they did this, why can't I? Right? And then figuring that out and figure out what it's going to take. And it doesn't mean it won't take some hard work, doesn't mean it won't take some sacrifices, but it can be done. And when you realize that part of it, doesn't matter if you started day one. It doesn't mean you got to go 10 years before you can get started. I know plenty of people that have been in real estate longer than me that have not gone as far in the journey as they could. And I know people that have been in a shorter period of time that have gone way faster than I did when I started, right? And so they just got to decide that, figure out where their journey is, and then just get rid of any of those limiting beliefs and expound upon it.
Yeah, love it, man. Absolutely. So what I heard is you really just got to find your fit. One thing about that is you got to try. You got to maneuver around in those areas and those positions till you figure out what it is that you actually want to do. Like you're saying, without trying, you're never going to know. That's something that I talk about all the time. And I think that a lot of people miss out on or just miss in general of not trying new things, new and different things, because you're never going to know if you don't know, right? There's no way until you get in there and you experience what it's like to do that and see some more insights into that until you figure out, okay, this is where I know that I want to be. You may even think that you think you want to be somewhere, and then you get there and you actually want to, move down. Like before I even started real estate, I knew like I was overseas in Kuwait. I hadn't even taken my real estate course yet, and I knew I wanted to be a broker owner. So here I am 7 years later, but some people may think the same thing and then get into it and be like, man, I'd rather just be a team leader or a solo agent, or maybe I really want to kick this thing up and start a franchise like you did. So one thing that's been on my mind a lot lately is the difference between being a visionary and an integrator. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a book on that, right? There's the book that talks about the visionary and the integrator. And essentially, the integrators are the ones that are getting stuff done and putting stuff into place. The visionary, the integrator almost like shakes their head at those people, right? They're like, yeah, it's just pie in the sky. You're making this up. And I've been fortunate to have great integrators around me that can take the vision and go run with it. And what I've also found as the visionary is sometimes I come up with something and it is pie in the sky. I've created the future of what I think this can be, and I continually have it. I'm like a serial visionary, right? And I start getting a vision for other people's lives. I get a vision for mine. And what happens and what I've learned is nobody wants to follow what you're saying until they want to emulate what you're doing. If you don't have what they want, they don't want it. And if you get a vision and you create it and you say, hey, this is the thing, I can have no debt and I can go live under a bridge. Who wants to join me? Everyone's going to say, yeah, it's not really the vision I had for my life, right? And so what happens is you got to create a vision that is attractive and what other people want. And then you've got to run the play. And I think it was Bezos who said leaders are right a lot, right? And we don't like to talk about that. It's kind of arrogant way to look at it. But ultimately, if you're a visionary and your vision's not coming true, you can blame the integrators or the people around you, but you didn't create a clear enough vision of how it could be done, right? And so putting those plays into place and then executing are huge. And you've got to have a vision and a drive behind you to make sure it's through, because you're going to get with somebody who's going to say, they're going to say, it can't be done. It shouldn't be done, right? And you've seen the meme, the people that say it can't be done, get out of the way and watch me do it kind of thing. So the integrators have to be around you. You've got to integrate too as a visionary on some level to build the credibility. And that would be kind of my viewpoint is you can't then get stuck in integrating and not go back and create more visions, right? There's got to be new visions coming along and integrations. And the synergy comes when you get two people that are aligned together. You got a vision and integration, a vision and integration. And a good visionary will help other integrators create a vision because it'll go into a lane. And so that's what I meant by like, I'll have a vision for somebody else's. I'll say, hey, Ben, what do you want to create? And by simply asking that question, we get out of your mind whatever it is you want. You said, all right, I want to own a brokerage. I want 100 agents. I want 10 team leaders there. I want to have 50% of mortgage company, 10% of title, and I want X amount of money a month coming in, right? So that's a vision you created. And then what happens is we've got to create it. And where I usually run into a big problem with those kind of things is we go, okay, great, we had a call on that, and we walk away. And Ben's saying, Ryan, I thought you were going to create all that for me. And I'm like, wait, no, I was helping you create the vision. You still got to integrate it and go do it. So it takes these follow-up calls and conversation to really dive in. I had this go on with me. I had a visionary working with me and he helped create a vision. And once you start thinking like this, it's really fun. But the problem with this, he wasn't doing it either. So we're meeting for weeks. We're having some fettuccine Alfredo and nothing's changing. I'm like, all right, so, this is cool. We've talked about all this. When is it going to go start playing? So then he starts asking me questions that are layered into it. And so one of them was like, all right, so how many agents do you have? Okay, what's your profit like this month? How long until you'll be at 50,000 a month, right? So these simple questions, and I'm saying it really fast, but those simple questions created where I had to then figure out the check marks to getting there. He gave me a vision. The question was the vision. And then now you have to integrate all of it. I still had to do it. There's a fun part that comes in. And we've talked about this a little bit, which is where you get to freedom. And freedom is when you create the vision and then you have an integrator in every lane. And that integrator is driving the vision of that lane. And that's really fun.
Love it. Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. It's probably one of the, if not the toughest thing in business, especially if you are a visionary. You can have all the great ideas in the world, but if you never integrate it, take the time to put in the work or find somebody to integrate it, then it's never going to go anywhere. Like you were mentioning, he was telling you what you need to do, but even he wasn't even doing it himself. And speaking of leaders, that's one thing that kind of playing off of what you were talking about earlier is, you can be a visionary. That's great, right? And if you have an idea, but you also kind of have to be the example for everybody else. If they see you doing it and then
Right.
it's working, well, then they're going to be like, okay, well, I heard him and it sounded great, but he's actually doing it and it's working. So maybe now I should actually do something myself. But yeah, I just think that's probably one of the hardest things in business is If you are a visionary, you better find an integrator. As we all know, in the leadership of First Class, there's several good examples of visionaries and integrators. And of course, KC boys, as we refer them to, I think are a really good example. One thing about business is people think that they're going to start a business and they're going to have a lot more time, location, and financial freedom. What are your thoughts on freedom?
If people aren't careful, they end up naturally setting up a job, right? And when you're setting up a business, the biggest misconception is you have to do something to generate something, right? And so, like, if I own a roofing business, then the more roofs I do, then the better my business is, right? And so when they go out there, they want the roof done, and I'm going to do it well, and it's going to be perfect. And me and my roofing guys are going to do a great job on the roof, and you're going to love your roof, and it's not going to leak. And the customer service, communication is good, right? And so everybody say, hey, that's a great roofing business, right? And I say, that's a horrible roofing business. And they're like, why? The customer's happy, you did the job, and you made money. I said, because you're having to set up and do everything that's there. And when you're not on a roof, you're not making money. There's no freedom in that because you now have to be on the roof to do it. And they say, yeah, but other people don't do as good of a job, and they don't have the work ethic, or they're not good at customer service. And so I said, well, to build a business, then you need to solve all those problems. So that's the difference, is people don't get it to a place where they're solving those problems and allowing people to leadership, right? And so if it's a roofing business, then all of those things you said you want the business to look like, then everyone should function and operate inside of those. The problem is you say, hey, buddy, I need you to do the roof, and I need you to answer these people's questions when they have them. He says, but Ben, it's 90 degrees up there on the roof, or 120 degrees on the roof, and they're trying to calm me down to ask me some dumb question about what's on the inside, right? And you're like, no, you can't like, their mindset is wrong, so you've got to fix that. That is working on a business. Fixing the mindset of them having the wrong mindset of how they're going to operate when you're not there. Working on that over and over and over, where you're establishing those people as leaders to be there in your absence, now gives you freedom. And what happens is that gets too hard. They're too difficult. I don't want to build those systems. I don't want to deal with those people. All of that stops people from freedom. So they just keep doing the roof over and over. And instead, they're thinking, it's 120 degrees up here. I don't want to do a roof. I don't like people. These people are bothering me. And they're just doing it with a smile on their face. And they're miserable doing that. And so I'm anti that side of business. I like it where the business is going, and you're building a business, you're building the people, and you're building the systems and processes.
Yeah, you definitely got to eventually leverage yourself. What that makes me think about is I know you know this, the cash flow quadrant, how it breaks out. One, you're an employee and your amount of active work determines your income. When then people think, okay, well, I'm going to become self-employed and things are going to change, when in reality, you're basically still an employee. And they're like, okay, well, I'm going to start a business out of this. And that sort of things do change, but still, you could still be an employee in your own business until you actually leverage yourself. And of course, the last part of that is being an investor, where your income does not depend on your actual work, active work that you put in to create more money.
It goes back to your original point, was the vision and the integrators. Like, they had a vision of freedom. They set up a business to doing this, but then they got stuck in integrating, and they couldn't get out of that. And that's what I do. That's where I come into play. That's the advantage I bring to our franchisees. If they want to go on and keep being the integrator, it's fine there. I don't stop anybody from doing that. I don't stop anybody from being an integrator all the way around, but it doesn't stop me from being the visionary and integrating my business the way that I'm going to. And I have to your point, I have to keep doing that, because if not, then they're going to say, well, why am I going to listen to you? Then you're not going to go in and do this. But the real thing of it is this: it's fun. Like, once you find this fun, I like disrupting stuff. I like pissing people off with different business models and different plans and different visions. Where are we going? Where's the industry going? What is going to be the biggest disruption? What's going to be the biggest opportunity? And what happens is we got to be like little kids having fun doing that kind of stuff. It's not this wearing a suit and tie and we're in a corporate office like that. They're all stuck. Those people hate those jobs. They're stuck to shareholders and all the other stuff that goes on with that. The majority of us are not in that position. We can go be as disruptive as we want. We can go make our own vision, and we can go run that play. And if it's going to be, it's up to us to do it. And we can do it. But we can't get wore out in the minutia. We can't get wore out in the integrating. We can't stop, because we talk about this all the time. The average time someone tries something before they quit Zero. They talk themselves out of it. Well, it's just, I'm not going to find a good roofer to do this. I can't get good real estate agents. The mortgage industry is going to be this. The title is this. It's like, I get it. There's problems. There's the problem to solve. And you're going to make $1 for every problem you solve because the average person is going to quit. And when you can do that, create that vision and create that way and that path, that's what we see in leaders. And we all want to be that leader, but we have to do that and get past it to be able to have the vision and the freedom that we're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes me think about the picture of two miners, top and bottom. They're both digging for the diamonds, and one's like that far away from reaching the diamonds, but he turns around and quits, and you got the other guy who keeps going. I think that's another big issue in business in general, especially if you're coming from a W-2 job, you've never been self-employed before, never ran a business. You don't realize what it takes to actually run a business, much less start one up and keeping it going. But it's crazy how if you just keep failing, if you just keep failing forward, eventually you're going to get there. You spoke about limiting beliefs earlier, and with what you just talked about a second ago, trying to start something else or add something up, like you were saying, trying to find somebody to fit in that role. A lot of people have that limiting belief of thinking that nobody else can do it better than them, and that holds them in place for so long, thinking that they're the only one who's going to be able to do it the way that they think it needs to be done, when in reality,
why do they think that way? Remember we talked about the original question you said? It's integrated in them to be the best. And that's over and over. I don't care what field you're in. I sit down with doctors who run doctors' offices. You've been to lawyers' offices. Why are we waiting in line in the doctor's office? Oh, because they're high demand. They've gone to school, but they didn't learn business. They end up dropping into a big medical field in most cases. And not that I know the medical industry at all, but my point is that they're still not running it as a business in most cases. Now, there are some good business people that are lawyers. There's some good business people that are doctors, but everything is a business in one way, shape, or form. But these people don't look at it as cost of a customer and how we're going to run those through the system and what the revenue is going to be and the profit and going through financials, because they didn't learn how to run a P&L. They didn't learn how to generate more revenue. They didn't learn how to do marketing. They didn't know how to do HR, right? Like they learned one lane and you have all these pieces. But the fun, when you learn all those pieces, can never be taken away from you, right? And so obviously your listeners care about that, or they wouldn't be listening to this right now. They want to learn, they want to know something, and so they're picking up information. And then they get stuck. How do I apply this? How do I use it? And some of what we're talking about is even in general senses, but they've got to go in and get into the weeds of their business and figure out that model and figure out this business stuff so that they can start applying it. Because once you get this freedom of doing this, you literally can take these business principles, and I argue this every single day, right? So you wouldn't realize this. I even had a call even before this, and I'm talking to somebody, they're the best. I mean, they are literally the best at what they do. And I said, guys, we're going to scale this. They're like, no, you can't, because we can't. They got to have this. He literally said, they've got to be Navy SEALs. You got to hire Navy SEALs. I said, if we got to hire Navy SEAls to do this, the system's broken, the process is broken. You got a beautiful system, a beautiful process, and this is scalable, and they're going to make a ton of money in doing this, and we're going to scale it and grow it. And what's going to happen? And he says, I just can't answer more questions. I can't. I said, buddy, and I'm trying not to give too much information about who they are, but I said, honestly, in 3 months from now, you won't exist in this. You're going to get paid to do nothing. I have to get you out of the way. Too much information and you're bottlenecking it. And I've got to get you out of the way to make this business go. You're going to make more money passively than you're making right now working. And once that light bulb goes off, then they go, okay, I'm listening. And so what happens is I'm going into their business doing this for them for an equity piece. And that's what I do, because I say, well, it can stay this big or I can make it this big. And I say, just give me a chance. And I'm funny. I'll say, just give me the model. I'll put up my own money. They're like, you're going to pay your own money? Yep, I'm going to pay you with my money. I'm going to pay for it and send you money. What? Why? Because I'm going to take this and scale it. And when I do, I'm going to get a piece of everything. And that's fun to me, because if not, they were stuck and they were doing a great job and they were stuck. But what I pictured is all the people not benefiting from what they offer. What they offer will be a huge value. And if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be going into this business. I'm not going. It's funny. I talk to stockbrokers. They're like, hey, there's this business you can do. It's owned by Anheuser-Busch or whatever it is. I'm like, I don't do alcohol stocks. And they're like, hey, you can do this one. It's cannabis. And I'm like, I don't do cannabis stuff. So like once I don't believe in a systematic thing, like it doesn't fit my structure of what I want to support, I don't invest in it. But once it does, I'm all about it. And then that's how I end up going into try and do this and scale it. But I've learned every business runs on these same principles and these same models. So once someone tries to tell me otherwise, even if they're doing well, I'm going, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. And then they're either going to listen or they're not. And I'll just move on to something else.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to say this quote on every episode that I do. I mean, it's so congruent. But like I tell everybody on every episode far, I'm a big quote person. And one of the quotes I love the most is, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple because of what you just said. Every business runs on the same principles. Like there's a blueprint. There's step-by-step plans that every business does the exact same, no matter what it is, where it is, how it is, why it is. They all do the same things, and that's what it takes to start, manage, run, grow, and scale a business. And it's so crazy because, well, one, in society, whether you want to call it social media society or sales and marketing, has kind of ruined everybody because they think that there's some magic pill out there, some magic course, some magic plan that they're going to be able to buy and it's going to change everything. When in reality, it's literally these simple steps that you just have to take action on. You have to integrate, not just take action and integrate, but do that consistently over a long period of time and just be patient and watch it grow.
There's something I thought of and I lost when I was listening, so much so that I was not thinking about what I was going to say, but I wanted to share it. Now I can't think of what it was, but you said something, it was somewhat profound. Oh, you said this goes on in kind of every business. What was that part of that you were talking about again? The initial part of what you started to say with this is it's simple and not easy. And then you said something. What did you say after that?
I was just saying the quote is simple and it's not easy because, you literally do the same thing over and over again. It's the same plan, process, steps, whatever.
Every business has this same problem. And because they're all the same, every business has the same flow of like in and out and how the process is and what those middle level managers are and whatever. But what you're going to find is businesses are inorganic. They don't exist. They're not real, right? But people are. And so the only thing that stops a business from growing is the people. So when you see a business, then we're going back to the visionary and the implementations and things like that is it goes on the person has a track record of not getting in their own way. And everywhere we look, somebody is bottlenecking and stopping their own business. But every business is that way. It doesn't matter. I mean, it could be Elon Musk stops his business from being too out there, right? And Tim Cook may be stopping the business from being too conservative, right? And so everyone's got a different style of how they run it. That's the fun part. When you figure out your style and your rhythm and your recipe for what works, and you go and do that. When you don't, this is the hard part people don't usually like to hear. When you don't, you say, why is it that every time I go start something, it doesn't get to completion? Why is it when I have an idea, I can't get it implemented? It's the wrong team around me, or, oh, it was just a bad idea. It was the wrong timing. It was the wrong market. Those people got lucky with the market. They got lucky with the timing. They got the right people. And so what happens is we become a victim. And then that goes on over and over. Instead of we get up in the morning, we have our cup of coffee and we're sitting there, we're going, why is it because I got a new idea and I thought that was going to be better. This was too much work and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to stop and get the process. I didn't want to make the checklist together. I didn't want to make the manual for all that. I just wanted to do it all. And if I was doing all the work myself, I didn't have time to do the manual for someone to be able to come in. So I'm doing roofs over and over again. I'm doing roofs because I don't have the manual, the checklist, and the training for all the people that go in. Okay, now I did that. Guess what happens? Now I hired John to do the roofing and I made the manual. I did the checklist, I did everything you said, Ryan, but guess what? He's not following it. He's not doing what he's supposed to. Okay. Well, then let's go work on a new business because John didn't follow the process. Or we could lead them to following whatever it is, right? And so then that's where this business really takes form. Because the problem wasn't the business. That happens everywhere. They didn't follow the process. We didn't make a process and a checklist or whatever it is. That happens everywhere. There wasn't a business plan. That happens everywhere, right? So all of this stuff you'll see is based on us. And every time we solve these different problems, we open up a new opportunity. Now, I'll give you one more big problem I see all the time, right? So we have like this title company we're going to set up, right? And we're going to end up offering it to agents so they can buy in and then add like 30 agents into it. So everybody goes in and they get an equity piece of it. Now, somebody comes in and they say, well, why don't I just open up my own title company? Why do I need to go do that? So I'm a real estate agent. I'm doing 20 deals a year and I'm doing well, right? But now I'm going to go open a title company. Now I got to stop that one and go learn a whole new business and run this process of doing it because it will make me more money if I do it all myself. But now what happens is I had to leave this other business over here so that I could work on this one instead of plugging in because I don't want to be a small share owner. I want to own it all, right? And so you go, okay, you can do that. Here's how much it costs to do that. And now it costs this much money. So now they had to go do all this work to make money, to live off of, to save enough money to invest the whole thing into a new business. And so now they had to do that. And they go, well, I don't know, 15 grand, that's a lot of money to do it all on my own, right? And now I got to pay all the money and do all the work. So now they have a new problem. And what happens is, guess what they're going to do when they realize that? They counted their costs. It's going to take me more time and more money than I thought. Guess what they end up doing?
What?
Nothing. They stopped altogether because they couldn't own the whole thing all the way outright versus going in small, scale up and grow to their business. Now, what they could do is they could be adding agents, growing their team, growing the real estate office, getting that small piece is growing along with them, and then pull out and do their own mortgage and title, right? And so these are simple little steps that real estate people can do over and over. And the difference is, here's the difference. They're going, I don't want to do this because you're going to win, Ryan. I don't want you to win. I go, yeah, but I'm going to put up the money. And now I'm at the place now where I'm going to put up the money so that you have a way to win that you didn't have otherwise because I believe in you. And that goes on over and over. And guess what? Believe it or not, Ben, that doesn't always work. Guess what happens? I lose. I lose sometimes because they didn't do their part. I was dependent on them to do a part of this. And then they didn't do what they were supposed to do with my money up. They had less risk. But I had all the risk. And at the same time, I've done it and we figured out what lost and figure out how to do that better next time, right? And that's okay. That's all part of the business and doing this. But we want to help people get a lot of money and then they can buy real estate, open up mortgage companies, title companies, real estate offices. It's all work. You're going to get up today and do something. If you can get 3 or 4 things going off at the same time, great. And then if we can plug in, like you talked about, that integrator into those businesses where they start running on their own, it's even better.
Love it, Ryan. Absolutely. So, a couple of things I heard out of all that is what you're telling me is it all falls on the leader. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They blame everything else on everybody else, their employees or their contractors or whoever it is. And I mean, yeah, there are some certain situations and instances where, it's not their fault. But majority of it is, you just got to keep going.
It's always your fault. It's always, as soon as you own it, that it's always your fault. You're not the victim and you can solve it and solve the problem and fix it, right? And when we think it's the team, when we think it's somebody else, it's always us. You remember Remember the Titans? Remember that movie, The Titans?
Yeah.
And the 2 linebackers are, kind of the leaders of the team and they're fighting. And he goes, you got a bad attitude. And he goes, attitude reflects leadership. And that has always stuck with me in that people's mindset of giving up or not doing it or not following the process or being upset or disgruntled, all that is all comes down to leadership, is how much they're expecting from their leadership and what is being solved and how it's being communicated. All of those things can come through. Now, it doesn't mean somebody doesn't still have a bad attitude about something. I mean, just, there's not a one size fits all in all this, but, you get the idea is that it's leadership can direct and dictate the flow of a business.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I've been on a kind of mental leadership journey for the past 7 years, or really longer than that, probably like 10 plus years, leading up to getting into real estate because I knew that I wanted to start a business and begin a leadership position. While being in the military, I was in the leadership position and I knew I needed to self-develop myself so that way I could try to be the leader that, people needed. The second thing that I heard with everything that you said was basically buying into something already running instead of wasting time recreating the wheel is the way to go. And I definitely resonate with that for 2 reasons. One, bought into the First-Class Real Estate franchise. That's what I told myself before when I was out there trying to figure out what to do. it's cool opening up your own independent brokerage, and that's not like me hating on anybody that's done that at all. There's a lot of super successful people that's done that, and there's a fit for everybody, right? Depending on where they want to go and how they want to do things. But it just makes too much sense to not waste a lot of time trying to figure out literally everything that there is to, one, in general, run a business, and then two, run a real estate brokerage for this instance. I mean, the whole reason of this podcast is to talk about business and how to start one up, how to grow it, scale it, manage it, and real estate investing. And another reason is to give resources to people who come here and listen to this podcast. But talking about all that, like literally right here to my right, I've got a whiteboard, and I've been breaking down what are the different areas in the business and all the different hats that the business owners have to wear. And so I'm going to create a resource that everybody can check out in the show notes or on the description on my YouTube channel when these podcasts go out. So you'll be able to have some resources to know different places on how to get your LLC, what bank accounts to get, because everybody thinks you should go to a local bank. There's actually, I'm kind of getting sidetracked, but there's actually there's a lot of online banks, one called Relay that follows the profit first model, and you can create like 20 different bank accounts. Not that you need that, but as many as you need to have those buckets. So I'm going to be creating a whole resource. But back to buying into something instead of recreating the wheel. Another big thing that's going on right now, I'm sure that you've seen, is there's a lot of people that I follow. One person mainly is Cody Sanchez, and that's all she does. All her social media is about buying businesses versus starting one up. Find a business that is already running, is kind of already proven itself, may not be where it could potentially be,
which gives them the opportunity, because those people running the businesses necessarily is efficient, like we talked about and all the other things. I know I'm stopping you, but I want to go back to something real quick. But they say it's better to buy it, but see, you had to make money to be able to go buy it. Otherwise, you got to build from scratch, and this is kind of the dilemma. But I wanted to point something out before we got too far off. So everything, when I was speaking earlier, you came back and echoed back what I'm hearing you say. So I don't want people to miss that. That's a leadership quality, right? That's a communication. That echo back is huge for any leader that's out there leading people. If you can say, hey, what I'm hearing you say is, that is huge. And so you're doing it. You weren't even doing it to point it out or give it to anybody else, but I didn't want that to be missed in what you were saying. So anyway, all right. So so then, there's people that are out there doing the business side that are buying businesses right now. There's going to be a huge shift in that because there's money that has to be spent. And then there's a tax savings of depreciating stuff and all that in there as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to think about. I appreciate you saying that. I could get on a whole nother tangent and we could probably talk for an hour. You want to talk about communication. I've been talking about that a lot with different people, but that's the number one. I think that's probably the number one problem in business. As a matter of fact, if you want to relate it to real estate, being a realtor or just being a business owner in general. So when I was like I told you, 7 years ago, before I got my license, I was in Kuwait. If I wasn't on a mission or at the USO going through my real estate course, I was researching, because I've always been a big researcher. Still to this day, I'll just sit here on my computer for hours researching stuff, just trying to get better. But obviously, the number one breakdown that clients say is the biggest issue with realtors is their lack of communication. But that applies in business as general. As a leader, I mean, there's so many businesses that have so much potential that if they would just focus on their communication a little bit more, create some processes through some systems, and just communicate better, they would be a whole nother business. I mean, that, it's just like a big problem right now, and it's always been a big problem, is people trying to call contractors or service-based companies and getting a hold of somebody, for one, getting them to answer the phone, and then two, them actually showing up when they say that they're going to show up. It's just a lack of communication. And if you've got, one, a system, and then two, a process to follow on that every single time, then you're never going to fail on that. This brings me to a point that I think about and talk about all the time too, as well, is like literally, if you were to create a checklist, a daily, a weekly, a monthly, quarterly, yearly checklist, and you checked off all of those boxes every single time. I'm talking about like the simple things that you should do as a business, and you check that off, you're already like 90% ahead of the rest, maybe 95. And then all you got to do is just go the little extra mile, and now you're the 1%, or the one, maybe the one business out of all the other businesses competing in your area or even in your, region.
Because we don't lack knowledge right now. We don't lack information. There's more than enough.
Not at all.
And it ties to one of the key things that I tell everybody. And so we have a phenomenal team at First Class Real Estate, right? Like, and I could just brag about that, and it'd be like, okay, yeah, of course you're going to brag about your people, but it's like they didn't leave. You know, there was a huge great resignation through 2020. They're all there. They still all work. We went from in an office to remote to now they're across the country. But I will tell you that what I'm getting ready to say is the premise to a business. And what you're going to find is everyone, you need one key factor to anyone you're going to have around you, right? And so you match effort and energy in this one key thing. This is my rule. It's like a rule. I keep it as an employee. Now, somebody can join as an agent or franchisee and they don't follow this rule. I don't recommend it, but they could. But I keep people around me and I bring them on when they do this one thing, just one thing. They only have to do one thing. If they do this one thing, everything else is easy. You know what it is?
What?
Have you ever heard me say this? I usually say this from the stage. I say this all the time. They have to follow instructions. If someone can't follow instructions, you can't lead them. There's no helping. If I say, hey, Ben, I need you to take this from here to over there. If they can't do that, how can I focus on anything over here when that thing didn't get done? If I can't, and so it's this huge pet peeve of mine. I mean, when I was younger in leadership, I would explode. I mean, I was just such a jerk about it. You idiot, blah, blah, blah. I hate to tell you that, but that's just how I was. I'm better about it now. But what I realized is I don't get upset about it anymore. I just remove them. But so once I find them and they follow instruction, then they can stay on and they will build up. Because as they follow instruction, they get level 1 done, level 2, they can get a clearer vision of what the next part is. Everyone that fails doesn't follow instructions. You can go find all the information you want, but if you can't follow the instructions on how to do it, this is why YouTube videos are so powerful, because you can do step-by-step instructions to how to do it. How good is that value of that if the people don't follow the instructions? So they don't go to this. So you'll find people that go to YouTube, they're resourceful. They find their own way through it and they follow instructions. That's the kind of people you want around. Isn't it? It's like, it should be like this epiphany that goes on for people like, hey, I'm going to hire John, who's going to watch my LMS video of how to run my roofing company, which I don't really own a roofing company, but I'm just using it as an example because then people will feel less defensive, like I'm selling them something. So he follows the instruction. Now you can go on to roof number 2 and hiring John 2.0 and 3.0 and 4.0. Now you can build a business. If you don't get people that follow instructions, you're going to be in a really bad spot. Now, I'll tell you, there's a caveat to this, all right? Most people don't follow instructions, all right? And I don't mean the people you're going to hire. I mean, I don't follow instructions. So I won't follow instructions. You'll tell me exactly what to do, and I don't do it. I need to know this about myself, so I have to hire someone to do it. So it'll look something like this. Ben, I need you to hire 4 agents a month, okay? And you're going to say, well, there's 5 other things going on in my world. You don't understand an A, B, and C, X, Y, and Z. I go, call me back when you're ready to hire 4 people a month. Ben says, all right, it's been 6 months. I haven't hired 4 people a month. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I say, all right, then let's do this. Let's hire John. And John's job is going to be a salary to hire 4 people a month. Okay? They hire John. John doesn't follow instructions and can't hire 4 people a month. And there's every number of excuses. This is just an example, but doesn't hire them and do it. Then you got to find John 2 and John 3 and John 4. You mentioned the KC boys earlier. They hired people that did the stuff they wouldn't do. These guys are more ADD than I am. They are in a million different directions. You can just talk to them for 5 seconds and see their brains are going 100 miles an hour in a bunch of different directions. They can't follow instructions. So what they did is they hired someone that follows instructions and follow the play, and they get all the credit for it. Isn't that crazy? You mentioned the visionary and the integrator. They brought an integrator in to run the play to follow instructions. You can't integrate if you're not following instructions, right? And so all this gets really clear in how business is going to go. If you don't do this, then there won't be any business to run. You have to have someone that's going to follow instructions. So, but we have to find out, are we going to follow instructions? If we're not, we have to hire someone that's going to follow instructions. And that's usually been my thing. I won't do it. I'll get spun out in some other thing. I won't run the play, and the business will suffer. Businesses don't have problems. They have people. I'd be the people that's causing the problem. So you're going to realize people are going to follow instructions or they're not. When they follow instructions, you go to the next level. If you're not going to do it, then you can't find someone. If you can't follow the instructions and you can't hire someone to follow the instructions, what do you think that's going to mean for the business?
It's probably going to tank.
You're not going to have
Go
a business.
nowhere.
There is
Yeah.
no business if you can't run the play and they can't run the play, because it's not information. The information's out there. There's an LMS, there's a manual, there's a checklist, there's a report card, there's a this. You hire real estate agents and you know exactly what they need to do to be successful, right? Do you know what you could help somebody do 3 deals a month easily, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've literally been thinking about this right now. I was writing down notes for that because I can totally relate to everything that you're saying. Being a broker, I've literally helped a couple of agents do pretty well in their first year, a lot better than most agents do in their first year. And then due to personal reasons, they had to take a different route. But as you're sitting there talking about, that's all I was thinking in my head is like, man, I know exactly what it takes. And I say it all the time, like literally, if a realtor would come to me, and it's the same thing in business, like what you're talking about. Like if people would just listen and then execute and do exactly what you say, you can take them to where they want to go. And it sounds so simple because it is, but it goes back to that quote, right? It's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple because we don't lack information, like you said. It's there, or I'm giving it to them, but you can't do the work for them, right? You still got to do the work. So it goes back to what you're saying. If they can't, follow instructions, and they're not going to go anywhere. And another thing you said was you want people around you who, yeah, I'm going to give this information, this knowledge, this resources to agents, which we have. It's very vast. I love it. I think it's some of the best that I've seen. But some of the best people, the ones that that are going to make it, whether you're talking about being a realtor or a business owner, which you are essentially a business owner as a realtor, and I'm the same way. The ones that are going to make it are going and finding the information themselves. They're not waiting for somebody to tell them something. And that's the way that I've always been.
I thrive in those situations. I mean, even as we're sitting here, you realize I have no power. Like I've been without power for 9 days and I wasn't missing this. I got the generator going. I got the Wi-Fi on. I got power ran up here. I got air conditioning going. I had to figure it out. I don't know. I'm in a new house in a new area. I had to get it done because it's got to get done because nobody's coming to save me. Right. And so I can make an excuse and I can push it off and push it off. And I'm like, yeah, but then what is that saying about me? And I don't care what you were going to think or anybody else is going to think. It's what I was going to think about me. My wife and kid are going to sleep comfortably. We're going to have what we need because I'm going to solve the problem. Right. And but that didn't happen just because of a hurricane. This happens in everything. There's a hurricane in everything that we're doing. And so, going back to this thing of the following instructions, is getting people to follow instructions also means sometimes they're not going to listen. You lack the leadership where they're not going to follow what you're doing because you're not following the regimen of what they would want, that they're not attracted to, like we talked to earlier. And at the same time, sometimes it's the way we deliver it. Sometimes people need to hear it somewhat in a little bit harder way. And I'll tell you, this is a big one that I usually find is the biggest problem with leaders is they think if they're not going to do it, I'm going to have to do it for them, and I'm not. So you got this power struggle that's going to go on. And this person's thinking you're going to do it for them, and you're thinking I'm not going to do it for them. But nobody ever has that communication about how that's supposed to be. I thought you were going to do this for me when I came on. I thought you were going to do this. I thought you made it sound so easy. Because remember, you cast the vision of what it is. You made it sound so easy. And now it is easy. You've got to follow these steps and then you've got to execute on them. But so when you're doing that, you're going to have to find a way to communicate and set expectations. The right expectations are huge in getting people to get the results. And so if they're expected to set a certain amount of appointments, make a certain amount of calls, get a certain amount of contracts, that has to be set up, but it also has to be followed up on. And so you're holding them accountable. And the book Leadership and the 1 Minute Manager says that you're going to tell them, you're going to show them, you're going to watch them, and then you're going to spot check them. So you're going to tell them, show them, watch them, and spot check them. So if you do that, you'll set up pillars over and over and over again. And again, if you watch them, or if you tell them, and then you watch them, and they don't follow what you said, and then when you show them, and then you watch them, and they don't do it, you've already told them and shown them, and now you're watching them hands-on. If they don't have it after that, you're going to know I can't let loose yet because you still don't have it. People let go here. You got an accounting person and you've told them, you showed them, you watched them, and you let your hands off and they weren't doing it good when you were watching them. That's a setup for failure, right? And then you'll come back later. See, Ryan, I told you this person sucked and you can't count on anybody. You got to do it all yourself. And I said, well, yeah, but you put the wrong person in because you just ran through these 3 levels and they weren't the right person and you just kept on going, right? So that's part of this is how you lead them through that. And I love taking people that, like you say, you took people that weren't finding success somewhere else and have them find success here. That's the challenge for me. I want the people that can't find success and I just have this eternal optimism that I'm like, yeah, but I know I can communicate it in a way you can find success. And sometimes it's like all on top of it with information, and sometimes it's withdrawn. And I've learned that I learn sometimes with withdrawn. And I tell the people the story all the time about this guy, Toby, that was my coach. And we were flying somewhere and the airport thing changed. I stopped to get a coffee and the airport gate changes. And I text him, hey, the gate changed. And it's like 5 a.m. And he says, yeah, I know, I'm already here. It's like, what a jerk. Why didn't you tell me that it was there? And I could be upset. Hey, you know what? You can do X, Y, Z, which he was actually doing me a favor when we were doing this. So I didn't even think that. But my point with it is, in leadership, we expect them to tell us. We expect them to be out ahead of us. We expect them to communicate all these other things. And when he said is, you're a grown man. If I got to tell you all the things, you're always going to expect me to tell you all the things and be ahead of it. My goal is to have you figuring this out so that you're out and you're independent without me. And that's why he runs $1 billion company. And I'm down here because I'm thinking this level. And so what happens is that shift has to change. That expectation has to change. And we're going, wait a minute. You're teaching people and telling them they've got to operate and function in that. And they can't, if they're expecting you to come in and save the day all the time, you're not going to ever get them to where they're supposed to be. And so that can also be a teller of where they're going to ascend to in their business.
That's awesome. And I've appreciated having you on the episode today. I always want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I appreciate everything that you've given the insight into today. I hope somebody gets something out of this. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today, whether you're listening in on a podcast or you're watching this on my YouTube channel, Wiregrass Veteran Realtor. Make sure you check the show notes or the description in the YouTube video for links to resources on how to start, manage, and scale a business. But before we go, Ryan, how can people reach out to you?
What I did is I went ahead and set up kind of a new name to go by, if you will, is Real Estate Rhyan. And so I set up Real Estate Rhyan, and my Ryan is Rhyan. So it kind of gives me a little bit of a difference to everyone else. But moving into a new market, I knew nobody knew me and I didn't have any access to anything. So the YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, everything I set up with Real Estate Rhyan. So that way you can follow and connect. And I'm pretty accessible on all of those platforms. And then I put all the information and I give out stuff freely, that way as well. And, try and challenge people, give people different things to think on and work on that way as well.
Awesome. Too easy. So basically, like I tell people, just Google search my name. So go Google Real Estate Rhyan. Yeah. Google Real Estate Rhyan, Rhyan. And also go check out his book. I believe it's on Amazon. Explode. It's called Explode: The Proven System to Sell 500 Homes a year while keeping a balanced life. I read it. It's an amazing book. It's definitely helped me out a lot. That's crazy to think you can sell 500 homes in a year and still have a balanced life. That's a whole nother topic we could get on another date. There's a lot of realtors think that they can't have a balanced life, but you actually can. But thanks again, Ryan. I really appreciate having you on here. And I hope everybody got some value out of today's episode. See you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me on the Real Estate and Business Success Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's insights and are ready to apply these strategies to your own business endeavors. If you found value in the episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who might benefit. Stay tuned for more interviews with successful entrepreneurs and actionable advice to drive your business forward. Until next time, keep pushing for success, and remember, success is just around the corner.